Sales, Editor-in-Chief of World Trade 100. Today I am speaking with John Costanzo, President at Purolator, about the growth of Canadian e-commerce and logistics to Canada. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Martha. Good to be here.
The growth of Canadian e-commerce and logistics to Canada is on the rise, with online Canadian purchases from U.S. retailers expected to jump to $31 billion by 2015. U.S. retailers with an e-commerce platform need to identify a solid Canadian supply chain now to maximize revenue later.
Martha, while Canadian consumers may not have been as quick to jump onto online shopping, for example, in 2007, Statistics Canada reported that online spending totaled about $12 billion. But today, the projections by 2015 expect that figure to jump to as high as $31 billion. And there's a lot of factors for that. One thing, Canada was much less affected by the recession than we were. They never had the hype or problems in the housing market and unemployment figures that we experienced during the depths of our recession. So the combination of that plus a growing comfort level with online shopping has resulted in a lot more purchases out of the U.S. And in particular, Canada is a large country requiring the ability to buy merchandise from the stores and the retailers that you want within Canada. So online shipping gives them a great alternative to doing that.
So the spike in online sales to Canada has triggered a need for cross-border B2C logistics. How are the transportation providers rising to the challenge of offering guaranteed delivery to the Canadian market?
Increased sales to Canada have given U.S. retailers a new challenge. Canadian customers expect, like we do, the same high-quality service and on-time delivery as they get from their Canadian merchants, and they want to do that at the lowest cost possible. So Canadian consumers have set the bar very high for U.S. retailers. Once a customer clicks the mouse to finalize a sale, their clock starts ticking, and U.S. businesses really have one chance to prove that their goods shipped across the border and delivered at a reasonable cost to consumers is the right solution. And that's created a demand for cross-border shipping services and providers who understand the Canadian market and the whole process of getting shipments to your customers seamlessly.
So what are the biggest challenges in bringing shipments across the border to Canada?
I'd say the three major challenges are, one is customs compliance, the process of getting shipments across the border. Although we're very closely aligned with Canada, it is a different country, and you do require clearing customs and a company that can help you do that seamlessly. The Canadian Services Agency or Border Services Agency does a really good job of publishing its rules and regulations. As they say, the devil's in the details. Another is transporting goods into Canada that can trigger numerous duty and fee mandates, customs requirements, things that you need to know and be aware of when serving your customers in Canada, and failure to properly comply with those could result in penalties and delays in your deliveries. While most businesses entrust that compliance to a logistics partner, it's important to make sure that partner has a complete understanding of the process and the trusted shipper programs that allow expedited clearance. The second challenge is to have a distribution network in place broad enough within Canada to ensure guaranteed on-time delivery. As I mentioned earlier, Canada is a very large country, but 80% of the population lives along the border within about 100 miles. So those customers are easier to reach than the other 20% who happen to be off in the hinterlands, and those are the most difficult places to reach and likely where people are using the internet more often to make purchases. So it's important to understand that overnight and express delivery options that we're accustomed to in the U.S. are not always as prevalent in Canada with every company serving the market. For example, one of our branch offices in Vancouver at the Winter Olympic Games, when they were drawing to a close, had a shipment coming from a Chicago businessman who was desperately trying to find a way to have materials for the Special Olympics, which was scheduled to start right at the end of the Games, overnighted for Saturday delivery to Vancouver. And that individual was stunned to learn that his level of service to Vancouver was virtually non-existent. So fortunately, we were able to help him and the crisis was averted, but it's a good example of the challenges of doing business in a new market, which brings me to my final point. It is take time to understand the Canadian market. Many U.S. retailers are happy to have the business of their new Canadian customers, but quickly learn that Canada does have its own way of doing things. Most of Quebec, for example, speaks French, so it's important that your logistics carrier can properly label and converse with your French-speaking customers. A huge mistake occurred last year when several U.S. businesses launched Canadian websites but decided to charge prices that were as much as 25% higher than the prices on their U.S. websites. That sparked a tremendous consumer backlash, and retailers, including J. Crew, Abercrombie, had to apologize and amend pricing for their customers. So it's critical to align with partners that understand that market. can help you overcome these obstacles.
Well, you mentioned retailers, and one big thing is returns. What does a U.S. business need to keep in mind with regard to processing the estimated 8 to 10% of sales that will be returned?
That's right. I even think in some cases that's higher, not only higher in terms of percentage, but the cost of returns are higher to most shippers because you don't have the volume and the expense to get an individual package or two back from places in the outlying areas of Canada can be much higher. A recent study also found that 89% of Canadian consumers expect free shipping on those returns. And a separate study by KPMG found that almost 60% of consumers said how well a business handles returns is a major factor in whether or not they're going to shop with that business in the future. So it's important for a business to be out in front with a comprehensive returns policy that meets their customers' expectations. For example, how often will returns be picked up, and will there be a designated U.S. returns processing facility? Will consumers be assigned a returns number as a way to provide better tracking and visibility throughout the returns process? And can you take advantage of backhauls and LTL routes from your carrier to help control and reduce cost of getting those back to your distribution center?
Another issue with so many carriers to choose from, how can a retailer decide which one of them will best handle their specific cross-border needs?
Well, I guess the first thing a business should ask is, can this carrier meet my needs, or will I be forced to change my needs based on what that carrier offers? If the carrier provides a one-size-fits-all solution or approach to Canada, that may limit your ability to serve your customers and have them shop around to look for alternatives. A really good carrier will offer a seamless border crossing, as I mentioned earlier, not slap you with unexpected bills or charges for additional border fees or charges. Their rates would be transparent and understood by you and by your customer. And last, establish pickup and delivery times based on your business needs. And I guess I'd add to that, offer tracking visibility. This is particularly important since 79% of consumers in a study recently say that tracking is their most important customer service requirement. And then finally, I'd add that a menu of flexible options for services is a way to customize a logistics plan for your Canadian customers, whether they need a shipment overnight, or they can wait 2 days, 3 days, pick them up at a local depot, for example, that we have throughout Canada. Those options can make the difference as to whether your business gets the sale or somebody else does.
Any final thoughts for U.S. retailers interested in jumping into the Canadian e-commerce boom?
Yeah, my advice is to go for it. There's a lot of opportunity in the Canadian market for any U.S. business, particularly in the e-commerce space right now. But go into it with your eyes open. Take the time to do your homework as you do with anything else you do for your business. Shop around for the most qualified logistics providers, ones that offer you the breadth of services you need to serve a market as large as Canada. And having the right provider will make a tremendous difference, I think, in how well a business is able to succeed in the Canadian market.
I've been speaking with John Costanzo, president at Purolator International, about the growth of Canadian e-commerce and logistics to Canada. Thank you, John, for your insights today.
Thank you, Martha.
I'm Martha Walls, editor-in-chief of World Trade One.